Hey everyone, and welcome to today's Explainer. I am absolutely thrilled to have you here. We are going to jump right in today because we are going on a massive, honestly pretty emotional journey through Earth's incredibly dynamic, ever-changing roster of creatures. We're talking time travel, folks. We're going to go back hundreds of millions of years, fast forward into the pretty heartbreaking modern era, and then, finally, we're going to look deep into the shadows of today's forests. But first, I want to pose a question that's going to anchor this entire explainer. What happens when the monsters of our nightmares are replaced by the monsters in the mirror? It really makes you think, right? We so often look back at prehistory with this sense of awe and, let's be totally honest, complete relief that certain terrifying beasts are gone. But as you'll see today, shifting from the thrill of those ancient apex predators to a sobering look at our own human impact, well, it changes the story entirely. So here is our path forward today. It's a wild ride broken into three main chapters. We'll start with terrifying prehistoric predators, then move into the recent tragic losses, and finally explore the mysterious ghost species that might actually still walk among us. All right, Section 1, Nightmarish Prehistoric Monsters. Let's get into it. Okay, the sheer scale of the ancient world is just staggering. Think about a modern millipede, that tiny, completely harmless garden bug that's maybe a few inches long. Now I want you to scale that up. Meet the Arthropleura. Imagine walking through a Carboniferous forest 300 million years ago and seeing a bug up to 3 meters long. That's 10 feet. It was as wide as a car tire, completely covered in these thick armored plates, just sliding over ferns that were taller than humans. It eventually suffocated out of existence when the Earth's oxygen levels dropped, but man, it absolutely remains the crawling nightmare of prehistory. And if you thought the land was wild, let's talk about the ocean. A modern great white shark tops out around 20 feet, which is huge, right? But the Megalodon, we're talking an estimated 60 feet in length, weighing anywhere from 50 to 100 tons. I mean, next to a megalodon, a great white literally looks like a goldfish. This extinct powerhouse survived until about 2.6 million years ago, and it was out there preying on whales as if they were chicken nuggets. Just unbelievable power. Actually, let's jump back to dry land, because the oceans didn't have a monopoly on terrifying creatures. This is the terror bird. The official scientific name is Forest ricata, but terror bird is definitely more fitting. These things absolutely ruled South America. They were 10 feet tall, flightless, and could run as fast as a cheetah. But the craziest part was the beak. It was massively hooked and capable of delivering these brutal, guillotine-like blows that would literally shatter the skulls of its prey. It could swallow an animal the size of a dog in a single gulp. It's like evolution took an ostrich and just modded it into the ultimate apex killer. Wrapping up our prehistoric monsters is the ultimate constrictor, the Titanoboa. Even just hearing the stats on this snake is enough to give you chills. 42 feet long, over 2,500 pounds. It lived in tropical climates roughly 60 million years ago, and it killed its prey by constricting with the sheer power of a freight train. It basically squashed massive animals like a tube of toothpaste. Yeah, I think we can all breathe a collective sigh of relief that this absolute titan vanished from the earth.
So that brings us to Section 2, Tragic Human-Driven Extinctions.
This is where the tone really has to shift, because the dodo brilliantly and tragically illustrates just how fast human impact can erase an entire species. For thousands of years, this flightless bird just lived its life on the completely predator-free island of Mauritius. It had literally zero reason to fear anything. Then, in 1598, Dutch sailors arrive. By the early 1600s, invasive species they brought with them, rats, pigs, monkeys, are feasting on the dodo's totally defenseless ground nests. And by 1681, it's over. That was the last accepted sighting. An entire species wiped out in less than 80 years. And the tragedy didn't stop on remote islands either. Let's look at North America. The passenger pigeon used to live there in sky-darkening flocks of billions. I mean billions with a B. A single flock could take hours to pass overhead, blotting out the sun. But because of ruthless hunting and incredibly rapid deforestation, their numbers just completely collapsed in only a few decades. The very last of her kind, a pigeon named Martha, died in 1914 at the Cincinnati Zoo. And what's incredibly heartbreaking about that is Martha died in the exact same cage that, just 4 years later, would hold the very last Carolina parakeet. Which leads me to perhaps the most staggering piece of data today, just this single number, 150 to 200. That is the estimated amount of species that vanish every single day in the modern era. Every single day. Extinction is moving thousands of times faster right now than at any point in human history. The sheer scale of this loss, it's just really hard to wrap our heads around. And that leads us right into Section 3, Haunting Final Photographs. Here is another incredibly heavy number for us to look at. 2,000. That is the exact number of bounties the Tasmanian government paid out for dead thylacines, which you probably know better as Tasmanian tigers. They were heavily hunted simply to protect sheep. This relentless bounty system completely collapsed the population until only a single female remained. She spent her final days in a Hobart Zoo, completely exposed to extreme weather, until she died of neglect in 1936. When we look back at the archival footage and the historical sketches of these animals, it hits hard. Take the beautifully sleek Tulich wallaby, which actually lost 10 of its final 14 survivors just during an attempt by humans to capture and save them. Or the great auk, totally wiped out for its feathers and eggs. We are left with this quote describing their final records, a silent image of grace and loss, reminding us how quickly even the most beautiful creatures can disappear. It's just a really heavy reminder that behind every single extinction statistic is a real breathing creature. Honestly, the profound loneliness of being the literal last of your kind is just hard to fathom. Take the story of Booming Ben. He was the very last eastern heathhead on Earth, isolated on Martha's Vineyard after terrible wildfires and habitat loss destroyed his species. In 1932, researchers observed him doing his mating display. He was just out there, calling into an empty sky, waiting for a mate that was never, ever gonna come. After that spring in 1932, Booming Ben was never seen again.
Okay, let's lift the energy a bit as we head into our final section, Section 4, Ghosts that might still exist.
This is where extinction meets real-life suspense. Let's talk about some unsolved cryptid mysteries. First up, the Zanzibar leopard. It was supposedly hunted to extinction in a 1960s extermination campaign. Officially, it was totally gone. Yet, in 2018, a camera trap actually caught footage of a leopard on the island. What about the Japanese wolf? Declared extinct way back in 1905. But after some really compelling pictures surfaced in 1996, a camera trap recorded an incredibly accurate wolf-like howl in 2018. And my absolute favorite, the giant ground sloth. Deep in the Amazon, indigenous folklore talks about the Mapinguari, a giant, hairy, bulletproof beast. And it perfectly matches the descriptions of ancient extinct ground sloths that literally had bony armor-like plates embedded in their skin. Which leaves us with a pretty haunting question today. Are they really gone, or just hiding from us? Think about it. As much as we humans have impacted this planet, there are still incredibly dense jungles, pitch-black oceans, and quiet mountain ranges where we simply haven't looked closely enough. It makes you wonder what else is out there, quietly surviving in the shadows right under our noses. Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer. Keep learning, keep questioning, and I'll catch you next time.